Hello, 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 everybody, and welcome to a very special Let's Chat with BigLundi. I am here today with my guest, Gabe Hayward, a guy that I met recently on Facebook. We had an altercation in the comment section, which you know how Facebook arguments go. It basically went the way that you might expect it to. So the argument ended up going into a bajillion different places. So we're going to try and constrain our sort of resolution that we're seeking here today into the main three topics that we went over last, I believe it was Friday night. Was that right?
I think it was. Yeah, it was Friday. Yeah,
it was Friday night.
Yeah, and I actually saw that post because I'm friends with Daniel Durst.
Yeah.
The worst. So that's how we got connected.
Chat with him a little a ways like several months back. I don't know. Like
I listened to it.
Oh, you did?
Well, he said, yeah, he's excited about this.
I'm sure he is. He loves it when I argue with people.
But I do want to say that I greatly appreciate just having conversations like this face to face, because so many people online, you get into those Facebook spats and all this shit's exchanged and it doesn't usually go anywhere. And sometimes when I said to people, put your money where your mouth is, well, why don't we just meet up or talk face to face, they ditch out. So I appreciate this format.
Well, it's on an individual basis. Some people think that having random arguments with people either face to face or even elongated ones is more trouble than it's worth. A lot of times, I'm kind of the same way on a case by case basis. When someone tells me that they think that whether or not someone's beliefs is relevant to their character. This is an example from recently that happened to me. I was having an argument with someone, and it was about how beliefs are a part of the content of one's character. My position was that it's a driving force of one's character, and as such, judging someone based off of their beliefs is not an unreasonable thing to do. It's what we do on a regular basis. If you're having a regular conversation with someone that you just met in a library or a coffee shop or something like that, and they say some super dumbass shit and you just don't feel like dealing with it, then you are fully within your rights to just leave and not participate anymore. And the guy said, well, I don't think that's the case, because what somebody says and what they believe is about as relevant to whether or not you should associate with them as the color of their tie. And I'm like, okay, there's just so much wrong with that. I just feel like there's more effort to be had in this conversation than I'm willing to put into it. So I'm going to go ahead and
that's kind of a weird, that's kind of a nebulous claim. I don't know. I think what he's probably
I don't know. Sometimes people's viewpoints are just so fundamentally different from each other that it's reasonable to think, I don't think we're going to have a conversation that's going to result in any sort of productivity of any sort.
Right. That's true. I mean, I've had debates with, young Earth creationists and stuff, and they, their standard for evidence is that I go find them a fossil or something like that. So it's just like that kind of person, there's not really any reasoning with. And I do appreciate debates where two people can go into it and leave, not necessarily having changed their mind, but just understanding the other's point of view. And I think both you and I think we agree on a lot. See, that's the thing is, I think we actually have a lot of points of agreement, but I think some of the fundamentals or some of the, ways that we go about it is different.
I think in a lot of the points of agreement that we may have, we've gotten to them by reasoning from different starting points. I think that's the issue. And those starting points has sort of colored our ability to not to get to those points that we agree on, and then sort of causes us to continue past each other, past those points is sort of the thing that I think is happening. Just to update everybody who's tuning in, who wants to know exactly what the hell is going on, doesn't know. Basically, got into a Facebook argument, and we went over several topics, and we're going to be going backwards. We're going to be working backwards from how the argument went. Because
landed on rights.
It ended up being an argument about just rights in general. And then it had
somebody had asked, someone on your thread had asked me, they asked me what my qualifiers are for what rights are. And I said, I mean, that's not something I'm going to sit there and type on Facebook for ages. I mean, that's a long answer. So I said, why don't we just talk about it?
Yeah. So it ended with that conversation and us agreeing to just have a debate about it. And preceding that, it was about a specific right that we heavily disputed over. And then preceding that, it had to do with a comparison between the Saudi Arabian Women's Empowerment Council, entirely populated by men, and the White House Committee on Women's Health, entirely populated by men. And me personally not seeing a difference between the two, but a couple commenters, including Gabe here, seeing a massive difference between the two. So we're going to get to that point at the end.
Maybe.
I'm not going past 2 hours. I'm saying that.
So we'll see how long it takes to get there.
So we're gonna start with rights first. I think it'd probably be a good idea if we started off like defining it. Do you
or describing? I guess describing what I see as being our rights, and you say, and I think we have the same. I mean, we do both see the difference between legal rights and natural rights. That's fair to say.
Well, I mean, yeah, there's a pretty obvious difference there.
Right, but some people, I mean, I've talked to people who don't believe in the concept of natural rights. So I just want to know that we're on the same page.
I don't really believe in natural rights either. At least, okay. I mean, it depends on how you define them. Honestly, like.
Well, I would define them as how they were defined by the early American philosophers and founding fathers like Thomas Paine, Thomas Jefferson.
Okay. Have you read just I mean, this is sort of going further than I want to for right now, but have you read Thomas Hobbes's critique of natural rights as defined by the founding fathers' fucking inspirations from John Locke and them?
Right. I haven't read that entire thing, but I mean, I've read snippets of Hobbes.
Right. So before we get into that, I think it'd probably be really useful if we just defined rights real quick.
Right. Well, I think
we're talking about the same thing.
Right. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. I mean, that's why I do think it's important to distinguish between, what we would call natural rights and legal rights, because those two things are very different. I mean, there are legal rights, and a lot of times when people are talking about what their rights are, they are talking about things that are just their rights only because the law, it's written within the law. But while that's helpful kind of in a utilitarian way, I think the conversation about what natural rights are is important as well, because there's a lot of things that people just throw out there, like such and such, housing is a right, healthcare is a right, all these things, but I would just say that they're not. Those things are not rights. I mean, they could be if they became somehow legal rights, but just intrinsically, I don't think those things are rights, because I think the list of actual important, the natural rights is very few.
Well, I would say that the only okay. Again, before we get into that, I'm gonna define rights real quick.
It's a big topic.
I'm gonna define rights real quick. Go ahead and let me know if you disagree. So my understanding of rights is that rights are entitlements to or not to perform certain actions, or to or not to be in certain states, or entitlements that others perform or not to perform certain actions, or to be or not to be in certain states. Sound about right?
Yeah, I mean the core, one of the core words in that whole thing was one of the first things you said was entitlements, basically.
Yeah.
To do or not do a thing. I mean, let's put it that way. We can. I think we can agree on that.
Or for others to do or not do a thing to other people.
Right. I mean, that it kind of starts. That's where they overlap, and yeah, I mean then every instance of our rights overlapping with each other is another issue. But yeah, I mean to basically, yeah, you basically gave the kind of dictionary definition of rights, which I would agree with for the most part.
Okay, good. So right now I'm sort of getting this image that you think that there's sort of like there's either natural rights or legal rights. Do you?
Well, they both exist. I mean, they're not like mutually exclusive. But when somebody kind of uses, X, Y, and Z is a right as kind of some kind of leveraging point, like as if, this is just my innate right. That's kind of, I mean, that's the implication I get when people say things like, abortion is a right, healthcare is a right, housing is a right. It sounds like they're appealing to natural rights as if those things are natural rights, but in order to kind of gain sympathy for that movement.
But it wouldn't have to be a natural right. I mean, there's a lot of different types of rights.
Well, but then by what, I know, but the thing is that, I mean, by what standard are these people saying that those things are rights if they're not talking about, something that they are entitled to by the matter, by the fact of them existing? I mean,
well, there's a wide variety of them. I think as far as healthcare, I would say that would probably pertain to moral rights. I mean that would to me sort of indicate a sort of virtue ethicist position on the sort of flourishing of human society and the ways in which it can best be maximized, and the ways
which people have different ideas about. But I guess actually what you just said about, say, healthcare, and this ties into the the abortion thing, which we'll get to later. But those things, I don't see those things as being rights. For the reason, I mean, this goes back to, this is what we kind of ended on. One of my main issues that I had with what you were saying was that for the reason that they require somebody else's servitude, and it's not just, that they require someone else to, stay off their lawn or something. It actually requires that, that a service is provided by another person. So if you say healthcare is my right, you are requiring that a healthcare provider provides you with that. I mean,
right, because it's the best way for anybody to have healthcare.
What's that?
Because it's the best way for anybody to have healthcare.
Of course, yeah. I mean, I'm not disputing that. Of course.
No. What I'm saying is, as far as like people who have actually done like economic studies and the like on this, the best way in order to have healthcare is for everyone to contribute to a system that affords it for everyone.
Sure. I mean, I'm not disputing that that's a great idea. I mean, it would be wonderful if, we had a huge abundance of these willing, benevolent doctors and, everybody just is all in it together. And it sounds like a great, kind of utopic scenario.
I don't know why there would need to be any benevolent doctors. I mean, this is we already did this for a long time. That's basic insurance programs.
No, I mean, let's reel it back a little bit to just this concept of rights. When you basically, from what I gathered in our conversation online, seem to think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but because I don't want to strawman you, but you seem to think that you can have a right, that an individual can have a right to someone else's service.
So long as that person is providing that service openly, yes.
Yeah, but okay, so then define that. What do you mean by so long as they're providing it openly? Like, I mean, does that just mean they have a business license or what? I mean,
so I don't know exactly. You said that you owned a business for several years.
Or ran one, yeah. Exactly. Not like own. Yeah.
I don't know exactly.
I ran a business. I was the manager of a business for 7 years. Yeah.
Well, just the basic thing. When you open a business, you sort of have to create a contract between yourself and the state that's going to sponsor a lot of the things that surround your business, a lot of the things that are going to contribute to you being able to make a business and all these sorts of things. And one of the agreements. Huh?
I mean, it's in paper. You get a business license, other paperwork required if there's some kind of reseller's permit, whatever. Yeah.
And one of those is a contract with the state government, which also indicates an agreement with the federal government in the way that it's usually worded anyway, that your service is a public service. Because you are building your business on public property, you are going to be providing a service. And as a result,
but hang on.
As a
result, I'll let you finish your sentence.
Okay.
I said I'll let you finish your sentence. As a result.
Okay. So basically, as a result of you offering that service to the public, then you have to non-discriminatorily allow that service for the public. Now, there are legal ways in which that can be sort of decontextualized, I guess, depending on how I don't know exactly the word for it. But the basic premise is that you cannot just arbitrarily pick and choose people that you won't serve. You don't have that right. They have the right to consume, just like anybody else.
Okay, so there's where we kind of disagree a little bit, because I think the circumstances matter, and it depends on what they are, and I'll lay out what those circumstances are in a second. But first, going back to your thing about public, I mean, public and private, I think you got something a little bit wrong there, because I mean, when you sign on to have a business, yes, you do make contracts with the government and make sure that you're operating under all the legal stuff, but your business is still a private business unless you're sharing, unless you have a shareholder situation and you're trading, publicly. You still have a private business. Your property that you run your business on could very well be private, and in a lot of cases it is. I mean, even like just a strip of businesses down some shopping area, that's not all public space. The sidewalk is public space, but business owners lease their property out. It's private property. That's why when somebody comes into your store and you ask them to leave, you have the right to ask them to leave, because it's your space that you're paying for. It's not public property. I mean, it can be, and I think that there is something to distinguish there. Is like if you're like in a park or something, you don't have the right to.
Understanding me a bit. I didn't say public property. I said public service.
No. Okay, you did say something about how when you start a business, you're making. You said something about public space. Is that?
Well, no, you're usually utilizing resources that are given to you by the government in order to build your property in the first place. So there's a lot of agreements that and in order to do so, you have to assign on to agreements with the government. And I mean, that's just basic.
I don't know what agreements you're talking. I mean, it's very easy to start a business. You apply for a business license. It takes about 10 minutes.
No, I mean, if you build a place that, like, if you build a separate place outside of like your home, that is to be.
Or if you rent a place, let's say if you rent a place.
Well, okay. Even if you rent a place, then that place is owned by who?
It's private property owned by your lease, the person who owns the lease, or I mean, the person who you are leasing it from.
And the state contributes to the maintaining of that area in general, right?
But it's not public property; it's private property.
Okay. Well, regardless of whether or not it's public or private property, it's still a public service, regardless. So
a business is not a public service.
If you make a business, you have to agree to provide your service non-discriminatorily. That's just a fact. You have to do
non-discriminatory, against certain classes. So here's the thing: is that there are laws that say, so like the Civil Rights Act, all that, businesses are not allowed by law to discriminate by certain criteria, and they lay these out very specifically: that race, gender, sexual orientation, that sort of thing, religion now, which I think is debatable, but they have very specific rules laid out for who you're not allowed to discriminate to. It doesn't say that you can't discriminate, just as a flat out blanket statement.
If you read further into the Civil Rights Act, you can actually find the clause. It's called the Consistency Clause. It basically. The consistency clause. Basically what it says is that you don't get to pick and choose who you serve arbitrarily.
I'm just trying to, I would like to read that. I mean, the thing is, I like, all right.
I can bring it
because of it. Yeah, sure. I'd love to see where it says that, because I mean, I was under the impression, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I don't think the arbitrary nature of it is necessarily what. I mean, that is why it sucks. That's why something being arbitrary, like your skin color, is why that's ridiculous to discriminate against somebody for that. But
hold on, what do you think arbitrary?
No, we're on the same page here. I agree that an arbitrary trait,
I understand that we both agree that you can't discriminate based on race, color, religion, sex, and blah blah blah. Well, religion being
because that's what the Civil Rights Act does. But it's not just anything arbitrary. I mean, here's an example. Somebody's a dress code in a business. So if you try to go into some club dressed in rags or just a hoodie or something, and they don't let you in, do you think that that's illegal? To have a dress code? Okay.
To have a dress code? Oh yeah, no, that's fine. That's actually part of the consistency clause. If you say no shirt, no shoes, no service, then that's a part of the consistency clause. You're saying it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter what you look like. If you don't have shirts and shoes on, then you don't get to buy from here. That's
right.
fine.
So it has nothing. Right. So I accept that there are certain things like race, gender. That is the law.
The thing is, you have to be consistent with that. You can't decide, yeah, you know what, you get to come in because I like you. You don't get to do that.
I mean, that would be really bizarre, but in a hypothetical scenario, somebody could walk in and I could say, say I run a flower shop and they want to buy some flowers from me, and they put the flowers on the counter that they want, and I just say, no, I'm not going to ring you up. Bye. And that's it. Then I don't have to, I'm not under no obligation to sell that person to make that transaction. Do you disagree with that? I mean,
it depends. What's the reason you didn't?
Well, why if I don't give a reason?
Well, then it wouldn't necessarily be every reason, which would mean that you'd be liable to be sued.
How would they sue you? Under what grounds would they sue you?
It's just sort of the way it works. If you don't give a reason, then it can be safely assumed that it's every reason that has to do with them.
Why would it be safely? I mean, you could just say something. I mean, you could make up a reason. You could say, I was uncomfortable by you.
Yeah, basically, yeah, and you can
make up all kinds of reasons.
You can say that it's because you made me uncomfortable. That wouldn't fly.
Why wouldn't that fly?
Well, unless you gave an actual legal precedent as to how that would work.
Well, it does work. You don't think that? I mean, so if somebody came into your business and you were extremely uncomfortable with them being in there, you have every right to ask them to leave.
Yeah.
Right. So how is that different?
No, sorry. I said yes. I said yes a little too early. I actually don't.
Yes, you do though.
You have to have a consistent reason and an actual.
The consistent reason is that anyone who comes into my business who makes me feel uncomfortable, they don't have the right to be there. I don't have to let everyone into my private business.
Yeah, they do have the right to be there, legally speaking.
No, they don't though. It's not a public. We already established it's not a public space. There's most businesses, just your average business that you walk into.
Yet again, my argument had nothing to do with it being a public space. It's about the fact
that it does, but it's not your argument. This whole argument does have to do with it being a public or private space, because
no, it really doesn't. Because what you're doing is,
yes, it does.
When you're opening your doors to the public, then you are offering a public service. That necessarily follows.
But you can just as easily close that door. What if I just say, "Oh, well, I'm going to close now. I'm not going to sell you these flowers. I'm closing my store right now." Bye.
That would be an interesting loophole, and that would probably need to be pulled out and hammered out in the courts a little bit. But it definitely would be something that would be in the gray area, I suppose. If you decided, I'm just gonna, I know my business hours are posted there, and I know that they're online, and that I've made it official what my business hours are. But I have decided to change them because you.
Well, no, it's weird. I agree. That would be absolutely bizarre. But the person has the right to do that.
Eventually, that would have to be hammered out in the courts. And I'm fully confident that arbitrarily closing your store because of a particular person that you just don't like in a store would definitely be ruled against.
I don't think so. I think that if you said, if there was any evidence that you were discriminating against a certain class that's listed in the Civil Rights Act, then yes, it could go to court. But I don't think that it was just some random.
I should probably point out that the Civil Rights Act, while it does list several protected classes, it's not,
that's like the whole point.
It's not limited to those classes.
Yeah, but you would have to challenge though. I mean, it's not limited to those classes yet, but you would have those. You'd have to, like, if I wanted to say, okay, let's say I had all right, so let's go to the consistency thing. So you agree then that it's okay under the consistency clause that you can have a dress code. So I could have like a weird stuff, like in my store, I could say, I don't sell to people who wear blue shirts. Is that accurate?
But that would have to be established prior to the store opening. Like that would have to be a part of you and the government having overviewed your business and your business model and your plan and all that kind of stuff.
So you're just saying if it's a specific
you couldn't, for instance, have somebody with a blue shirt walk in and go, I don't like that guy. New rule, no blue shirts. You couldn't do that.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's. I think that's a. I don't know why you would say that you wouldn't necessarily be able to do that. I mean, it is your business.
Okay, so like I said,
it doesn't belong to the public. It's it is your space that you can do with it. Within certain laws.
Within reason.
Yeah, well, not just within reason. I mean, you could have a really fucking weird, it's criteria for people to enter your store, just like you can with your house.
Your store probably wouldn't stay open for very long.
I know. I'm not saying it would. That would be absolutely.
But so long as you've established, and so long as this weird, strange idea of who can come into your store was established beforehand and not arbitrarily made on the spot, then you'd be fine.
But why wouldn't it be able to be made up on the spot? Who's policing the store's own policies? All it takes, like the store, like does it just have to be posted somewhere? Who's auditing this?
I think we already went over this. You have to make an agreement with the government as to your store and how it's going to be run and all that. Like they have to know all of that stuff beforehand. So if you just change,
they don't. You don't have to. You can change your store's hours, without passing it through the government. So if I wanted immediately, effective today, within this minute, change my store's hours to, just so I could just close right now, I could do that. You don't have to run that by the government.
No, but they will definitely audit that.
They're going to audit your store hours?
If you do that in some sort of strange manner and it's reported in some way, yeah, they could do that.
The only way they would do that, though, is if somebody was like trying to file a lawsuit claiming discrimination against them.
Yeah.
Right.
And so long as they could prove it to a reasonable degree.
Yeah, but how would they be able to prove it if you just say, I'm closing, I've just changed my store hours, I'm closing? I mean, and that's it. You're not like,
it's difficult to prove, but that wouldn't mean that it would have it wouldn't be illegal if it could be proven. Like, presume that it could be proven, and then explain to me how you would still have the legal right. Like, sort of, let's take this from another angle. If I could murder somebody and get away with it, that doesn't mean I didn't do something illegal.
Yeah, but you're not doing anything illegal by asking a person to leave your store either.
Well, you are if you're being inconsistent with the Civil Rights Act.
No, you're not. Because, like, again, this is your business where you set the rules. You don't have to run everything the way that your business runs.
I don't think you understand how businesses work. You're not king of your business. You're not king of your domain when it comes to running a business.
As long as you're following certain laws, you are up to a point. Look,
right, exactly. As long as you're following certain laws.
Right, but there's no law. There's no law that says you can't just
willy-nilly
decide not to.
People, yes, there is. It's called.
Now look, if somebody, that's a specific. Okay, if you run a tire shop and you just decide not to put tires on someone's car, you're gonna have a shitty business, of course, but because no one's gonna get tires from you because you're refusing to do the job that your business purports to do. But that's not, you don't have to, if I say I'm starting a tire shop, you're not obligated by law to put tires on people's cars. Like you should, because that makes sense. That's what a business is, but you're not bound by the law to provide a service just because you have a business license. I mean, you could have, like, if you walk into a Denny's and the waitress is just like, I don't really want to serve you.
They can be fired.
That's shitty service.
Fired so that the place doesn't get sued.
They probably will get fired. I mean, but it's not.
And if they don't get fired, and the management just agrees with them, and there's no like consistent basis for you to do so, then you could get sued and you would lose.
They could try to sue you. I don't think, but yeah, they would have to prove that some sort of discrimination on one of those protected classes was.
No, it doesn't have to be one of those protected classes. Like I said, it's not limited to those.
Okay, well, I'll have to read that and see if because you're saying that's under the consistency clause. Yes. I just don't have time to read all that right now.
There's actually been a lot of case law since the Civil Rights Act to demonstrate that the listed protected classes in the Civil Rights Act are not the only people that you can't discriminate against.
Right. Well, there could be more, and more would be determined by the courts as they arise. But, but they would have to be proven, though. I mean.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to let you know right now. This is something you can very easily look up. There's a lot of case law that has actually been going on since the implementation of the Civil Rights Act around like 53 years ago, something like that, or was it 43 years ago? No, it was like 53. It was 2017, 1964. If I can math, yeah, 53. But there's been a lot of case law since then that has been gone over heavily through the consistency clause to demonstrate that there is there's a lot of different other types of people that are protected, and that if you are, and not just types of people, but you can't arbitrarily discriminate against individuals.
Well, you're saying there's a lot of cases like this, but what? So can you name one? I mean, what's another category? What's another protected category? I'm just curious.
I'd have to. I don't remember any off the top of my head. I'm being told Hernandez versus Texas was one.
What was that entail? I mean, like.
Let me look it up real quick. I don't actually want to cite it without first taking a look at it.
Right. I'm just curious because if it's not to do with their race, gender, sexuality, the things that are already listed in the in the first part of the act, I just am curious what those are. I mean, is there a long list now of things, of classes that you can't, like, people with blue shirts or something? Like, I mean,
no, not like people with blue shirts and the like. I guess
what would be.
I might have phrased that kind of strangely, but it's not that the list itself has included people with blue shirts and whatever. It's that it's been used to demonstrate that you can't arbitrarily discriminate against customers. You just can't do that. That's just how the law works. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Here's what
your discrimination does not have to be on the basis of race and sex and national origin and that stuff in order for it to still fall under the consistency clause. Again, you gave it, for instance, of if I went to a cake shop and I asked them to make me a swastika cake, right?
Right, and you think that they would have to, or else you could sue them.
I think it would depend. I would have to look first to see what their practices are. But if they've made like national symbol cakes before, then yes, they would have to.
I don't think. I think that the store has the right to. They have the right to make their own policies. And
well, okay, there is one other way they could get around that, and that's if they have a policy to say we won't make any cakes that spread hate.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of vague, but yeah.
If they had that store policy prior to me going in there, then yeah, I could.
But you don't think that they would be able to implement that? Like, so what if they just didn't think of that? you know, and now that you've asked for this cake, they're like, oh shit, maybe we should have wrote that in our policy.
Yeah, what they would have to do to be safe is they would have to make the one cake for me and then make the policy.
I don't think that's true. I mean, a business owner.
Okay, well, on what grounds?
Like who would that have to be cleared through? Like be like, okay, so here's our policy now, as of right now. I mean, I'm gonna have to clear that. You don't have to clear that through anybody. It's just.
I'll say this: I probably wouldn't get a whole lot out of suing them, and I probably wouldn't even cover.
I don't think you'd even. I don't think there's a judge in this country that would take your case. Well, they'd throw it out.
I mean, you have no basis for that, so I can just ignore that.
Well, okay, sure, but look, here's what I don't get is like if you walk into a place and the clerk is like, nah, I don't want to sell you this gum or whatever, and then you're just like, okay, that's weird. I mean, I thought this was a business. I thought I could buy stuff here. I guess not. And then you try to take that to court.
Okay, so here's the basic thing.
Hang on, can I finish what I was saying? I just think it's weird. Like, what would you even bring to court? You go into the courtroom and you say, okay, so this guy didn't sell me this gum. And then they'd say, okay, well, do you think you were being discriminated against because of your race, gender, religion, or whatever? And you'd be like, no. And then they'd say, okay, well, are you suffering damages in any way? And you'd be like, no. Well, then you don't have a case. Like, under what grounds would you be able to sue anybody over something like this? They just decided not to give you a service. Like, what damages have been done?
The damages of your rights as established by federal law.
But that's the thing. That's where we disagree. Is that it is not your right to just have everyone who owns a business has to serve you. That's not your right.
I mean, I'll say this. Legally speaking, you're wrong. You might think that's not the way it should be.
No, I'm not legally speaking wrong. This is where, okay, so this is why we have court cases and stuff in the first place, is that where people's rights overlap. So business owners are not, it's not like the customer's rights just supersede business owners' rights immediately, like as a default, like certain they clash. And so if you just think you have some right to service, which is a weird, like you actually said that, that used that phrase, right to service. I have no idea what that is. It sounds like you made it up. But even if you claim that you have some kind of right to service, the business owner can also claim that they have rights under their business. So this is where they clash, and I'll
just tell you this. If you look up, because you brought this up in our conversation, the signs that some restaurants will put up saying,
I'm not talking about the sign.
Well, the whole "we reserve the right to refuse" service, that which is basically what you're implying here. That's not true. And they can't.
Okay, well, let's throw that out. I'm not even.
No legal source will agree with me on this.
Okay, all right. So I mean, that's not even what I'm talking about. Let's throw that out. I'm not talking about those signs that say you can put anything on a sign. It doesn't make it. So I agree with that. That it could.
So they don't mean.
So let's throw that out. I'm just talking about. And again, this is why it matters, which you seem to dismiss really quickly. It matters. Whether your business is public or private, whether your property that you're running your business on is public or private, this stuff matters because a privately owned business on private property is not. You can open it up to the public, but that doesn't immediately make the public's just their rights don't automatically supersede yours as a business owner. Your space. If anyone walked into my business, and like I said, if they're making me uncomfortable, I could ask them to leave. And if they don't, they're trespassing at that very moment. They're legally trespassing on my business's private property if I ask them to leave and they don't. And I could call the cops and have them removed from my business, and I don't have to give a reason. And I know because I've done this before. If somebody walks in and say they're acting suspiciously, and however I perceive that, and it's my business and my space that I pay for, and this is my public business, my private business, my private space, I can ask that person to leave, and I don't have to give a reason. And if they don't leave, I can have them removed by the police, and the law will fully back that up. So I don't know why you think that you have to just bend to the whim of every person that walks into your business. That you don't.
Well, I think that because that's the law, mainly.
No, it's not. It's not. You don't have the right to
I've
do
gone
this.
I don't know how many times I've gone over this, but you cannot. But the law is very clear on this, and case study is very clear on this. You cannot arbitrarily pick and choose who you serve. That's just the case. I mean, you can disagree with that all you want. You can say that shouldn't be the case all you want, but it is.
Right. Okay. So I think one thing that we're getting hung up on here is this this issue of arbitrariness, and I don't think that's actually even what I was initially bothered by in our original conversation.
I think actually, to quote you exactly, your bother was that you believed that that any business should be able to refuse service to anyone for any reason. That was your original.
That's actually, I mean, that's a bit of a stretch of what I said. I mean, I can go into my qualms with, with that and, these discrimination issues quite a bit, but I was mostly.
You said that, and you used the we reserve right.
I can quote something that you said. So this is what I had the biggest problem with. I think you said you have a right to other people's services should they make that service available in any way.
Yeah.
What is in any way? The thing is that, so if you're running a store, the contract that you have between the public that's coming in and your business takes place when that transaction is going. So if we're trading something, you're giving me money, I'm giving you a pack of gum, and that's the contract that you're entering into. There's no
that's not the only contract that you're entering into.
There's no pre-contract that says that I have to sell you that gum in the first place.
Well, there's a lot
I don't have to sell you it.
There's actually, okay, so there's a lot of rights that are sort of like expected to be covered in that sort of situation. For one, a customer is afforded the right to expect to be treated respectfully, so long as they are also respectful. They are afforded the right to be safe while they are within the confines of your store, which means if they get hurt in your store, you are held legally liable.
Well, that's a liability issue. I mean,
there's so many more things outside of just the purchasing of the gum. There's like a bajillion things.
Right, but we're talking about that. That's the service, though. So the service I'm providing is the gum. It's selling you the gum. I am under no obligation to sell you that gum, but you seem to think that you are. I mean, if I just say no, I'm not selling this gum. That's my. I don't have to fucking sell you anything.
I mean, again, it depends on the situation. It depends on the context. Because if it's a person who doesn't have a shirt on, and you have a pre-established rule that I won't sell to you if you don't have a shirt on, then that's fine. If it's a person who came in and they have a hoodie, and you have no rules about hoodies, but that particular person wearing a hoodie puts you off, and you go, you got to leave my store. I can't. Then he could easily sue you and win.
No, he couldn't.
Yes, he could.
You can definitely say this person is making me uncomfortable and have the police remove them that instant. And you wouldn't even go to court because you already have the law on your side by having them removed from your business.
Well, you don't. I mean, this is just the fact of the matter. I mean, I've already gone over like the consistency clause as pertained. I've explained it in great detail for you. And you've just been basically saying the entire time, well, that's just not how it works. And I'm telling you,
it's not. I mean, so unless you're telling me that
you have zero,
unless you're telling me, no, my basis is this. I mean, so you're telling me that if you ask someone, that you're not allowed to even ask someone to leave your business, that they're just entitled to be there.
You can ask them to leave, but you have to follow certain procedure first.
And if they
have the ability to just say. You do not have the ability to willy-nilly ask people to just leave your place. You just don't.
Yes, you do, dude.
Clearly you don't. I've already cited the law, the act, the clause. I don't know what else.
I've literally done this. Like, if somebody walks into your house, you can ask them to leave, and if they don't, they can be forcefully removed.
They're not the same legally protected.
they're both private spaces, considering that we're talking about private spaces, which we are. That's why that matters. And you just brush that off.
I do brush it off because the law brushes that off. They are not protected.
The law brushes off private, the difference between private and public. I don't think that's true. They don't brush. There's a huge difference.
No. Not between private and public, between businesses and houses.
But businesses that operate on, like, you could run a business from your house, and
yes, you can. And right. as far as that business is concerned, you can basically file that you don't have a location for your business.
What are the procedures that you think you would have to follow in order to kick somebody out of your business legally? Like, you said that you'd have to have some kind of procedure first. What is that procedure?
First off, you would have to have a valid legal reason to do so, not merely I feel like it. That's not covered.
I feel uncomfortable by this person. I suspect them of shoplifting.
You say you suspect them of shoplifting, and if that is an unlawful suspicion, if that can be
unlawful suspicion,
suspicion,
you can suspect anyone of shoplifting and you have them removed.
I mean, you can, but if they're a person
totally legal.
But if they're a person who's not, this is silly. This is so easy. But if they're not shoplifting, and they can easily sue you for being discriminatory against them. I mean, that's just how it is.
You would say that you believe that you can't remove anyone from your business unless they actually are shoplifting?
You have to have a valid legal reason.
Yeah, you suspect them. That's a valid legal reason.
You have to. Okay, well, you'd have to honestly suspect them of shoplifting.
Okay, yeah. So what are they going to do to prove that? Like, I mean,
sincere belief is a regular thing that's gone over in courts.
Okay, so the thing is that I don't think that. I just want to know what these cases are that you're referring to, where somebody went to a court and said, like, I was kicked out of this place, and it wasn't because of my skin or my gender. It was just, it was because they thought I was shoplifting. I mean, has there been a successful case where that was the case, where somebody was kicked out because they were suspected of shoplifting and they sued?
I mean, you're asking for something that's so ridiculously specific that I don't know, but I haven't. Okay. But I have legal precedent to believe that would be a case that's winnable. I'm citing the law. I'm citing the clause. I'm telling you what the law says.
There's no law. What law says that I have to sell you gun? That's not a law.
I've already explained that to you. I mean, we're gonna have to move on because I don't want to keep repeating myself over and over again. But I have sufficient.
My biggest issue. But let me just lay out. My biggest issue was not the arbitrary stuff about discrimination and stuff like that. My biggest issue with what you said was the phrase. I mean, and maybe you can clarify this phrase, because you use the phrase "right to service."
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm just trying to figure out what you think that means, because that to me, that doesn't exist. You don't have a right to someone else's service.
Okay. So as far as right to service is concerned, that can, the way in which I was using it is not something that I can cite legal precedent for, but right to service as a general concept is something that has a lot of legal precedent all around the world, actually, under Consumer Protection Acts. But I will explain what I meant in that context, which is that you have, I would say, what sort of right would I call this? It's not, I wouldn't really say it's a moral right. I would say it's a customary right. I would say.
What does that mean? I mean, is that something?
A customary right is a right that exists via local convention.
And enforced by whom?
The agreement that's already had by the people. Like, if you and I had just an agreement that you had a right to do something and I had a right to do something that is in conflict with no laws, then that would be a customary right between us.
Okay, so it sounds like an informal contract. Is that?
Yeah.
I mean, just a verbal, informal contract that's not protected by.
I would say that this is something that a lot of people agree in, that's not codified in law necessarily, that we can call a customary right. Just the notion that if you are a consumer and someone is providing a service, then you have a right to expect them not to unlawfully or arbitrarily discriminate against you as an individual, and that you can purchase their product, provided you have the money.
I mean, that just sounds like I would just call it, I mean, that sounds like an expectation. I mean, there's been some general expectations that I would expect.
There's actually a little bit of a precedent for this in sort of the economic standpoint, which is, I don't know if you know what redlining is.
I've heard of that. Yeah.
Okay, so just for those that don't know or that are watching, redlining is a form of economic discrimination that takes place sometimes, wherein businesses or areas wherein people purchase goods and products and services and whatever will up their prices arbitrarily to sort of not allow for poorer people to purchase at their establishments. There's been a lot of court decisions sort of digging into this notion and saying that that they can't really do that. So there's that, and that's sort of this notion that I should be able to participate in the same market as everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I you know, it sounds like you're talking in a lot of vagaries here. It's like, this notion and that, and these kind of informal contracts that we have between each other. But I mean, I would just say, yeah, I agree that if I was walking down the street and I saw a store that said, like flower, a little flower shop or something, I would expect that the person would want to engage in selling me stuff. But if I walk in and they don't, and they're just like, actually, okay, I'm not selling flowers, then I don't know what legal case I would have, because no damages have been done.
Okay, well, you could ask a lawyer as to what legal case.
Okay. I just don't know what under what.
I want to kind of move on, because there's this that actually brings up an interesting conversation. So rights, sometimes they conflict with each other. Yes. How best do we approach conflicts? What is sort of your way in which to understand when one right supersedes another?
Ooh, well, I mean, it is incredibly circumstantial. I mean, that's why, we have all these many court cases to decide this kind of thing, because it really, really just depends on the circumstances. I don't think there's any blanket way that you can necessarily just decide that, or bring that up casually. It's pretty complex.
So just to maybe help you out here,
if you want to start with specific examples, we can do some specific.
Well, I don't really want to go into specifics, because we're talking about the concept as a general thing.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and help you out here by explaining some of the more prominent theories right now. So right now there's sort of an older theory that states rights as trumps. No relation to our president. Rights as trumps is basically a theory that says that a right is something that a person has in an absolute sense, and it's necessary. Basically, if everyone in the world held an opinion and one person did not, there is no right for everyone in the world to silence the one person any more than there is a right for the one person to silence everyone else in the world, should he so have the power to do so.
Right. That is my understanding of. I mean, you're talking about natural rights, basically.
Well, no, I'm talking about the function of rights as trumps, but I mean, I'm going to be going into a little bit more detail here. So basically,
well, it is basically a kind of a Kantian principle.
I mean, it is a Kantian principle, at least.
Yeah, it's the categorical imperative,
like the moral way in which we would evaluate that. But that would then get into how we establish what rights are rights in the first place. But rights as trumps sort of establishes this notion that if rights conflict, then one of those rights is not really a right. That's basically what we come to as an inevitable result using rights as trumps. Because if rights conflict, then that would mean that one of them, at the very least, is not absolute. And since rights are absolute under this context, under this explanation, then it's not a right. Now, I don't buy into that because
I don't either. That sounds ridiculous.
I feel like there's a lot of contexts in which it wouldn't. That right could exist.
Almost every context, I don't see it being coherent at all, actually.
So maybe you might be a little bit more into the specificationist theory of thought, which basically says that rights, as we commonly understand them, are actually not what we think they are as they're phrased. So, for instance, the right to protest. The right to protest is not really the right to protest. It's just not specific enough, because you don't have the right to protest if you are going to cause harm, if you are going to do X, Y, and Z, if fucking Omega Z will occur. So basically, a specificationist would say that the right to protest should be read as the right to protest so long as nobody is harmed, no property is damaged, no diseases are spread, blah 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 blah.
Right. Well, that is the. I mean, but that's, to me, that's just the implication of most, if not all, of our rights. Is they they are your rights so long as they don't infringe on other people's rights. And sometimes they overlap, but that's different. That's different than, like, so yeah, we don't have the right to protest violently because violent protest is infringement on someone else's right to not be violently abused.
It's interesting. So would you say that's so far that's the one that sort of resonates the most strongly with you?
Well, yeah. I mean, that just sounds like. I mean, I wouldn't even need, like, that's what I've always thought was implied. Your rights are your rights so long as they don't infringe on other people's rights.
I should probably tell you that there's some pretty decent objections that have also been raised to the specificationists.
I'm sure there have been.
But the main one being that under a specificationist view, well, there's two main ones, I should say. First being that it's conceivable that what is being asked for as far as specific rights and specifying them to such a degree is actually impossible because of all the different possible situations that could occur. That's one objection. The other one is that it doesn't account for what one would call the moral residue of a right being violated. Say you have a pie cooling on a windowsill, and that is yours. You have the right to that pie because you made it. It is on your property. It is your pie.
Yes.
Now, John is a person who is starving, will not survive another day without eating something. John has a right to do what he needs to do within reason to stay alive. He eats your pie using his right to do that. But while we might say, okay, he violated your right, but it's also understandable why. So, but at the same time, we would say he still needs to apologize, and we would still request that he compensate you for the pie.
Hang on. Yeah. We would definitely call that theft and say that he needs to compensate you for the theft that he just broke the law. I would just say that he doesn't have the right to steal your pie.
Okay, so
that isn't his right.
So he doesn't. So you would disagree with the notion of him having the right to do what he needs to do.
He doesn't have the right to break the law.
Okay, so if you need to break the law to survive, then die.
No, I mean, it's his situation is unfortunate. The thing is, though, is I don't think you don't have the right to do anything necessary to survive. I mean, a lot of times people think that surviving, means they have to kill other people or steal other things. That is not your right to do that.
It's not about your personal opinion of what you need to do to survive. Like, oh, I need to kill someone or I won't survive. It's about,
no, but like, what if
objectively measurable? If he does not eat your pie, he will die.
that's an extremely isolated, like, hypothetical, though. He could. This man has so many other ways to get food. It's you're putting it in a box where that's the only way. That's not fair. That's not the only way he can survive. That's a completely irrelevant hypothetical.
Okay, so
he doesn't have to steal your pie. It's not his right.
Okay, so he doesn't have the right to live then.
No, well, you have the right to. Okay, going back to this.
Just to be clear, when I establish
the right to life.
I think you're
property
too much into this. You're objecting to something that doesn't exist in this hypothetical. So when I establish this, I am saying that the parameters are such, and I grant that they are unrealistic, but that the parameters are such that if he does not eat your pie, he will die of starvation.
So in your fantasy scenario, you're right. That's basically what you're saying. I mean, right. Yes. In your fantasy scenario, hypothetical, then he'll die if he doesn't eat that pie. But what does that have to do with?
So in that very specific fantasy scenario that you don't accept as being realistic, I accept all of this. That's not the point.
Okay.
Would you say that he would, in that very specific fantasy scenario, have the right to eat your pie, regardless of it violating your right to have a pie?
No, actually, I don't think so. Okay. I don't think he does have the right to eat that pie.
So even in the situation where it's required that he steal to live, he should not, and therefore, what exactly is the extent of someone's right to life? Exactly.
Like right to life?
Yeah.
Well, it is just that. It's to pursue your own well-being without infringing upon the rights of others. So that's why, it doesn't entail things like stealing and theft and murder.
Your right to life ends when you must infringe on any right of anyone else.
Well, like I said before, I mean, this is why it's important to establish things like legal rights and natural rights. And I would say that the most important ones would be your natural rights, so life, liberty, and property. And so, yeah, I don't think that you can violate someone's right to either one of those three, for the other.
Okay. That's sort of like fundamentally different from me. Like, I mean, it's just sort of this weird thing. Like, I've always had this thought experiment that's regularly put forward to basically everybody in like intro to philosophy, wherein a person has a starving family at home and his only option is to steal a loaf of bread or they will die. And as such, would you consider that the same as like somebody who just robbed a bank because they wanted more money?
Those are different situations. I mean, and that's why the law handles them differently. That's why we wouldn't, the person who's stealing to live wouldn't be penalized.
So what would be your response? What would be your response to the first guy? You catch him in the act of stealing the bread, knowing everything you do about his starving family at home.
Just because he's starving doesn't mean that he shouldn't be penalized. So okay. He doesn't have the right to steal a pie. It sucks that he had to, or he felt like he had to survive, but it's not his right to steal, to trample on someone else's rights to survive. So I sympathize with his situation, and I think that he should live, and but that's why I wouldn't penalize him. He should be penalized, but not as much as the guy who just robs the bank. It's
kind of interested in with your response there is sort of the emotionally charged wording of trampling on other people's rights.
Yeah,
I would say that there is definitely a difference in, say, I don't know, a dictator who like takes away your rights and masturbates with them and shoves them on your face. That's a person who is trampling on your rights, a person who takes away all of your access to food and says you have to buy from here and it's run by me and blah, blah, blah. I would say that would be trampling.
All right, so I could look up in a thesaurus what a better word to be to use. I don't know. It seems like a weird hang up.
Well, mainly because I would say that's more of an
lightly bitch slapping your rights. How about that? I mean,
I would say infringed is probably the best.
Sure, whatever word you want to use. I mean,
because okay, so this is basically this sort of new. This is the reason why we have these new objections to specification, is because the basic belief is that this idea that specification is say that there is no real conflict of rights, and as a result, even if so, and wherein one right was over the other, because that's basically what you're saying. There is no conflict of rights here. He does not have the right. That's basically what you're saying. So these guys are saying that's
in this situation, yeah.
Right. So these new guys, what the hell is his name? Feinberg and Thompson, I believe. I'd have to look for their first names. But basically, the whole point of this is them saying that in this situation, we would say that he has to recompense you. He has to apologize to you, right?
Well, but I mean, yeah,
right. But we wouldn't. But many people, anyway, I don't know about you, wouldn't say, now let's send him to jail for the same time that we would send any other thief for any other reason.
Well, it depends. I mean, if the guy whose pie got stolen didn't want to press charges, then he could drop the charges. But under the law, he could certainly penalize that person if he wanted to.
So the fact that we can penalize him so here's the thing. Under this new theory that's sort of being developed, wherein these sort of moral rights are, I don't know a good word for it, are in such that they can conflict and that they can exist and exist in conflict, is such that you can have your right infringed, and you can expect recompense for it, and it can be as a result of someone else having a right, i.e., a person can have a right that will infringe on another person's right, and that does not mean that they cannot be punished for it. Is the basic premise of this new theory, of these objections and this desire to expand a new theory.
Okay.
Because I don't think you would really, in many other situations, I don't know of many people who would say, it doesn't matter if he is dying and that is the only food that he can possibly get, and if he doesn't eat it, he will die. He does not have the right to eat it regardless.
Well, he doesn't. I don't. And I would. You don't have the right to steal. And
I would say he definitely does, but that doesn't mean that he can't be punished for it.
Okay. And so what? I mean, I guess what does this mean? So we have a disagreement here, but we come to the same conclusion, basically. Like, we both think he can be punished for it. So I don't really see why it even matters whether or not we say he has the right or not. I mean, I don't think.
I guess because for me, come
to the same conclusion anyway.
For me, this is just an interesting conversation because I went to school. I did philosophy for a long time, and I just love talking about these sorts of things. But sure. I think that your sort of your idea as to how rights work, in which a right can just not exist if it includes infringing on another person's property, no matter how intense that right is, or if it's a right that you would grant in other situations. Like, I'm pretty sure you don't deny the right to life in general, right?
Of course not. I mean the right, these rights that I'm talking about, life, liberty, and property, these are kind of the fundamentals of our rights. Those are, our natural rights. So everyone, of course, has the right to try to prolong their life, but it ends the moment.
What's weird to me is that you would take that right away in favor of.
It's not. I'm not taking anything away. You don't have the right to steal something from someone. That's not your right.
You can do to survive.
That's where we disagree. I don't think you don't have the right to do anything you want to survive. It's always within the bounds of
anything you have to.
what if you have to? I mean, if you have to kill a man, you know, you don't just have that
That's an
right.
interesting question. What if? What if we? Here's another like, just to make this as unrealistic as possible, so that I can make it clear to you that this is unrealistic, and we can just get that out of the window now. Aliens have abducted you, right? So aliens have abducted you,
Wouldn't be the
and
first time.
they have a giant drill thing that's going to go into your ass, and it's going to kill you, but they're going to get a lot of valuable information out of it. However, they're kind of curious, and they say, here's a guy over here. If you slit his throat, we won't put this drill all the way through your body and examine the remains.
Okay, but yeah, now you're talking about, I mean, I could come up with a way more realistic version of that.
Yeah, sure.
You're just talking about, you're talking about coercion.
Yeah, just some guy who has a gun to your head, sure. But I was going to make it unrealistic just because.
But then we have to reel it back to that person who's coercing you doesn't have the right to coerce you like that. So the responsibility is not on you.
I'm not talking about that person. We both agree that that person is in the wrong.
No, but that's why that example doesn't work, because
I use the aliens, because we're not even going to talk about, like, well, the aliens don't have it. Like, of course they don't have a right. They're fucking aliens who are killing people.
But if you're being held against your will, then you know, it's kind of.
I totally agree that the person who is holding you against your will and threatening you and coercing you does not.
That person's violating your right. You can't.
I totally get that, but that's irrelevant to what I'm pointing out to you right now. Regardless of how evil, like, let's just call him Hitler. I don't care. We both agree he doesn't have the right to do this. He's an asshole. He's a complete and total piece of shit. That's fine. But he has captured you, and he is now coercing you into killing someone. And if you don't, then you will die.
I would say that no, you don't have the right to kill that person. You're forced to by coercion, and that would. But that's, I don't know. Like,
it's not the right to kill that person. It's the right to do what you want.
To preserve your life. To preserve your life. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, that I don't think that's like, to preserve your life. You're being forced to kill a person to preserve your life. Yeah, I mean, you don't technically have the right. I still would say you don't technically have the right to kill that person. I think this whole level of coercion just negates that, because the burden of, you know, whose rights are, you know, in conflict here is going up a notch. It's not on you anymore. Once you're being coerced, you know, I don't know how the concept of those rights is relevant.
I mean,
just like if you're being coerced to steal a pie, just because like if someone said,
"Oh, I mean, you can be coerced by your situation." Like, it doesn't have to be a conscious person coercing you. You can just be in a situation where you have no other choice.
I mean, I just want to know where this is a realistic situation, because both examples are just bizarre. You're like, you don't have to.
The idea of someone pointing a gun to your head and being like, "Kill this guy," that's not really all that bizarre.
Well, yeah. Like, so what if someone put a gun to your head and said, "Go steal that pie"? And it's still not your right to steal the pie to preserve your life. It's
why not?
That's not a right. It's still not a right. Because the whole concept of your rights are already being infringed upon. They're being trampled on by the guy who's coercing you. So you don't have any rights at that point.
It's just kind of interesting to me that you would grant someone a right and then take it away once they exercise it in such a way that you don't like it.
No, but it's not me taking it away. It's never there to begin with. And especially if they're being coerced, then they don't. I mean, then they're literally having their rights taken away by the person who's coercing them. I'm not taking away anyone's rights.
Okay, so we
don't have those rights.
So let me just.
You're saying that they get that right as soon as they're coerced. You're saying that they get more rights basically once they get.
No, I'm not saying they get more rights. I'm saying that they're exercising the right we gave them from the beginning, the right to preserve their life.
I'm saying they don't have the right to preserve their life by stealing or killing. and that doesn't change once they're coerced.
I think
they're
think they do, but that doesn't mean we can't do something about that.
But you're saying that now that they're coerced, now they have that right, basically. Like,
I'm saying that they've always had the right, regardless.
Okay, well, I'm saying they always didn't. I'm saying they always didn't. You're saying they always did. That's right. Where we disagree. I
think it's weird because I don't think we actually disagree as much as you might think we do. Because while I'm saying that they have that right, I'm not saying they shouldn't be held responsible for it.
Right, and that's what I was saying earlier, is that, like, whether or not they have or don't have these rights, like, we both came to the same end. They can be punished for it anyway. So right. I don't really get how does our disagreement even work in a practical environment?
This kind of segues into something. So I brought up the starvation thing. And so for me, that sort of demonstrates, and you brought up coercion with the guy with the gun. And to me, the guy with the gun and starving to death are basically the equivalent drivers in the two situations.
I wouldn't say so at all. I'd say they're completely different. I mean, one of them is it's a 100% intentional, preventable thing, where starvation is a circumstantial thing. There's no intention behind it.
Well, regardless of whether or not there's intention behind it, they're both exploiting you in one way or the other.
Intention matters, though. A person exploiting you is different than you just not having food.
Starvation is not an evil entity. We can agree on
that matters, though.
But that's irrelevant.
No, it's not irrelevant. Intent matters.
Because, like I said, we can call the dude with the gun a Hitler. That's not relevant to what I'm talking about with these hypotheticals.
Like, I mean, you think that somebody, I don't know. I just don't see it. I don't see how those are even remotely the same thing. So somebody intentionally coming up to you and coercing you is completely different than you just starving. I guess that's totally different.
I guess it's just weird.
I just don't
like
see it.
I don't know how. I don't know why you're not like grasping this. I'm saying that whether or not the guy with the gun is an evil, terrible person is irrelevant. Being coerced into doing something to preserve your life, a right in which we give you that you are now taking away in the face of property.
But that's not coercion. Then you're not being a person who's starving is not being coerced into stealing. They just
of course they are.
Different.
You can be coerced by a situation. You don't have to be coerced by a person.
Okay, that's a weird word game you're playing there. I mean, I don't think that's not the way that I would phrase it.
Okay, then how would you phrase it? Like, if a situation that you're in doesn't give you any other option,
just if you look up
you otherwise would not do, then how is that not?
I mean, here's the thing, though. This is how it's not coercion. Coercion, the practice of persuading someone to do something by using force or threats. You're saying that is possible without intention behind it. That he's being persuaded by nature.
I mean, the threats. It says or threat. I mean, and I would say forces can put you in a situation in which you don't have an
force or threat,
something you otherwise wouldn't do. It's very simple.
Okay, well, I wouldn't call that coercion. I mean, to me, coercion, I would say, does have to have an intent behind it. You're not being coerced by being hungry.
Then fine. What would you call being put in a situation where you don't have any other option but to do something you otherwise wouldn't do?
I don't know, bad luck. Like, I mean, what does it matter what I call it? We're playing a semantic game.
I guess that's kind of what I want you to name it, because I want to have a name for what you would put on the current abortion situation that we're going to be segueing into here.
Okay, all right, that makes sense. I mean, I guess I would call it bad luck. Let's chalk it up to bad luck.
Let's just chalk it up. It just sucks. Yes,
okay, exactly. It sucks.
Let's establish some agreement.
There's a lot of people in a bad situation. They're not being coerced. They're in a bad situation.
I mean, when I ask you, what do you call it when a bad situation causes X to occur? I just call it a bad situation. I don't know. It doesn't really make any sense to me.
Well, I mean, it like, again, it's really circumstantial, because you keep going back to the pie thing, but it's like, that is such an unrealistic scenario that, like I said, it doesn't make any sense to say that that's their only option. And I imagine that when we make it more complex, like with the abortion issue, that there's going to be a lot more options. There's not a single thing that, that these people are being coerced into.
So I just wanted to put a name onto what currently is happening with trap laws in the United States targeting abortion clinics.
Okay.
Shut down.
Yeah. So let's talk about.
So in our conversation that we had on the back and forth before we got back, before we got to these other topics that we've already discussed, you said, "Oh, there's nothing wrong going on here. It's just the same thing that happens to every business. It's just government bureaucratic red tape to everybody. There's no targeted things going on here."
Let me clarify that. I mean, I didn't say nothing is wrong. I mean, I agree that those regulations suck. I mean, I'm not like, oh yeah, those are great. I think it's retarded that they have to close down a business for not having a hallway a certain length or whatever.
Well, I guess
that's stupid. Yeah, I agree. That sucks.
I guess what I meant by phrasing it like that was that you don't believe that this has anything to do with anti-abortion legislation. That this is the same red tape everybody goes through.
I would say that it has to do with certain people, who are making these rules. It could certainly have to do with their stances on abortion, but I wouldn't. What I was saying was it's not. I don't see it as being particularly like. I guess like a women's rights issue necessarily. I don't think these people who are making the laws are like, fuck women.
Okay, so I asked you during that conversation, I said, is abortion a women's rights issue? And you said yes, but having access to abortion clinics is not.
I don't think I said yes.
Oh, no. Sorry. You said we agreed that women's bodily autonomy is a women's issue. My bad.
I think everyone's autonomy is everyone's issue, individual issue.
I get that, but there's things that specifically target women's bodily autonomy, such as the closing down of abortion clinics for arbitrary reasons.
Okay.
And I say this because in order for a woman to actualize her bodily autonomy, having ready and safe access to abortion, and clinics that service their health in general, as well as birth control, I would even say, is sort of both necessary and sufficient for their bodily autonomy to be actualized.
Well, I guess I mean, it's hard to. I would say that I disagree with that. I don't think that because that's where we got into disagreement about rights to service and that sort of thing, because I don't think that it's anyone's obligation to perform that service. I mean, so I agree that the woman, I mean, because again, let's talk about what we agree on. I think that they should be able to choose, they should be able to get an abortion if it's available. But if it's not like it's not their right to autonomy that somebody else performs an abortion for them. Like they don't. I don't see why. Because you do realize that in order for like a service like an abortion to occur, it requires another person now to do.
Okay, all right.
To do something, right? I mean, somebody has to do something.
So of course, I don't. Do you think that what I'm saying is that we need to force people to be abortion doctors?
No. I mean, don't get me wrong there. I know that is a strange and unrealistic scenario. I don't think anyone's like going to force people into labor, but that is essentially at the core of what you're saying when you say that, such and such service is my right. I have the right to that person doing something for me.
Well, here's the problem. People want to provide that service and they're being
prevented. Let them. I mean, and they can.
No, they can't.
It's legal. No, well, it's legal.
Do you not?
And
so you understand what trap laws are. You understand that there are laws.
Yeah, I understand that it's hard in some states.
No, in like basically every state now.
I understand it's difficult and it's hard.
It's not just difficult and hard. It's basically impossible for a lot of people to open up a clinic. These laws have made it
then
impossible.
Right. So, I mean, I don't see a problem with trying to change those. I mean,
Okay,
you can try to change those laws. That's great.
Okay, this is a little bit off of what I wanted to sort of specify here, in that I don't see how you don't. So if I don't see how you don't think that having access to safe medical procedures that a woman specifically, like men don't have to do this ever, would have to have access to in order to realize their bodily autonomy. I don't see how you don't see that. Like, are you
because you're not entitled? Because we're talking about rights here, and you're not entitled.
Are you? First off, I should clarify. Are you pro-choice?
I am for choice. Yes, I think that up to a point, women should certainly be able to choose this.
Do you think that a woman has the right to choose whether or not she's going to have a child?
Yeah, up to a point, yes.
Okay, so they should have the right to get an abortion then.
I mean, yeah, they have the right to get one if it's, like we said before, if it's being provided. Available. Yes, if someone wants to provide that service, I think they should do it. Go for it.
So abortion is legal, officially, federally.
Yes,
they should have the right to have one, but there's laws being put in place all around the country preventing that from actually happening.
Yeah, and so I have no problem with people trying to change those laws.
You don't think that can be considered a woman's rights issue?
See, here we are again.
That's the only demographic it affects.
I mean, I don't think that it necessarily only affects. Okay, so you don't think that do you think that I guess a woman's choice to abort the baby is really solely only affecting her? Because I mean, it does seem like you are ignoring, say, like the choice of
that a man may want to keep the baby and he wouldn't want them.
Sure.
Sure, a man can totally feel like that. That's fine. Not his choice. Doesn't matter.
So how is it? I mean, so it doesn't really just apply to the woman. I mean, it is her body, but I mean, there's more people making decisions here.
There's no but. It's her body, so there's no but.
Her body, her choice.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so let me ask you this. This might be going off on a tangent a little bit, but we can reel it back. Do you think? Okay, so we both agree that women should have the right to opt out of having a child, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you think men should also have the right to opt out of having a child? In other words, if they don't want it, they want to abort it, but the female wants to carry it and have it, do you think they should be able to force the man to pay child support?
You mean the paternal surrender laws that we already have in the books?
Whatever it is that you can legally force a man to pay child support with, do you think that's
no? I mean,
okay, so
basically there's already procedures that men can do to surrender their rights to a child
and not have to pay anything.
Yes.
Okay, well, great then. All right, I guess you answered my question. I mean, because
I think it's irresponsible of them, because unlike when a woman gets an abortion, there's still something there that needs to be taken care of.
That's because I mean, yeah. The reason I bring that up is because I've talked to people.
There's just, I mean, the idea that there's no difference between a woman getting an abortion and the guy just leaving is just kind of bizarre.
Well, no, I mean, it's just basically, I just think that if we're talking about equality here, I do think that both men and women should be able to opt out of having a child. That's it. I mean, I mean
that you were accusing me of vagaries before, but that is taking the concept to its vaguest point to try and equate the two, when we both know that they're not the equivalent.
No, all I was saying, okay, the reason I brought it up is because I've talked to people before who, vehemently believe that men should indeed have to, whether or not.
I think morally they definitely should. I think morally they should.
Okay, so anyway, that was a little bit of a tangent. The reason I brought it up is because of other things that other people have said, but you said something different. Let's reel it back a little bit.
Well, I'm saying this. Legally, there are avenues that a guy can take to surrender his right to a child so that he doesn't have to pay child support, and he also will have no responsibility, and he'll never be able to see them again and all that stuff. That's fine.
All right, good.
I think, however, that morally speaking, that's a douchey thing to do.
Well, sure. I mean, that's not what I'm debating, but yeah. So, all right. Well, if that law exists, then that's great. So let's go back then to, I guess, where were we? So, like, kind of the concepts of.
Okay, so my
autonomy.
what I was talking about is that I don't see how you can see how you're not seeing that the systematic blocking of abortion clinics all across the country is not a women's rights issue. If you already accept that a woman's bodily autonomy is a woman's issue and that access to abortion is a part of their bodily autonomy, because we both agree at being pro-choice, and as such, they should have the ability to get one.
Yeah, to get one. But the thing is that if you're in an area that doesn't have a clinic, say, like, what if you're just in an area, like, laws aside, there just isn't a clinic in your area? You're not entitled to have one. Like, the accessibility part of it is something that I guess I disagree with you, is that that's not.
So when legislators are targeting abortion clinics, like, this isn't a result of people just going, I don't want to be an abortion doctor. That's not what's going on. I hope you understand that, right?
I mean, the thing is, like, in these states, say, for instance, where, I mean, if they were to do a vote or something, you know, the people who are making these laws and the people at large, I mean, the laws that they make are going to be a reflection of that area. So, I mean, I would say that in those states, there probably are less people who are gung-ho about starting abortion clinics.
Well, I'll say this, you're absolutely wrong, because it's a very minority position in the United States, in any state, to not, at the very least, allow for abortion in the cases of, for instance, rape.
Right. So I think it was something like 19% or something was the people.
Yeah,
the crazy.
That's over the entire country. Like,
right.
Sure, maybe only like 60-some% of people think that abortion should just be legal, but a substantial portion of the rest, in fact, over half the rest, still think it should be made available for special cases like, baby.
Yeah, but I mean, but let's just talk about, like, probability. Like, if you know, do you think that it's more probable that there's going to be someone, you know, if you just pick any random person in Seattle,
here's the thing,
Kentucky or something?
Is kind of my point.
Well, it does. It does matter, because, I mean, I think, you know, because there's those other scales, right, where, you know, you have this percentage of people who are for it in certain circumstances.
When it comes to someone having the right to do something that we both agree they ought to have the right to do.
Well, they do.
Whether
they have the right to.
I can't really.
Done.
You can't really say
they have the right to do it.
You can't really say that someone has the right to do something if they can't do it.
They have the right to abort their fetus by any means that they can without. I mean, that's where I made that really.
Yeah, you made that very crass comment about.
Yeah,
they can shove a hanger up their vag.
Well, and that's terrible. I wouldn't recommend
it.
But
terrible thing, and you wouldn't wish that for any woman, because you're probably well aware that that's a very risky thing that can cause a lot of damage to them.
Oh yeah, dude, you don't need to tell me about this. Like, yeah, I mean,
like this idea that we can just go with hangers instead of.
No, I'm not saying that you should.
that we could, and it would be this, and it would be still the same rights being actualized.
Well, I mean, it is essentially just your right to. It's your right to do with your own body.
I'm sorry, it's not. We've already, like, way earlier on, we've already established this notion that we both have the right to assume that we are going to be safe in basically any situation. We have cops that regulate this notion, that try to keep order and safety in general. I mean, so the notion that a right isn't something that you should expect to be able to safely practice is absurd to me. Like, you don't think that safety has anything to do with it in that situation.
Well, the thing is that it's going to, okay, so you mentioned police. Police officers are there to protect our rights, but nothing, I mean, nothing is in place.
Protect us as people and give us a sense of peace and a sense.
Well, one of the government's purposes in employing officers is to protect our rights. Protecting our rights is their, you know, arguably one of their primary purposes. But I mean, police aren't gonna, you know, what. I don't see it like, okay, when I'm talking about that coat hanger thing, of course that's terrible. I wouldn't say that anyone should do that. But my point is only this, is that everyone has the right to do with their body what they wish. That's bodily autonomy. You don't have the right to require someone else to do something for you. The accessibility of it.
That is not what I have been saying. I have already made it very clear to you.
But you're talking about accessibility. So
yes. I have made it very clear to you. My argument is not that we should conscript people into being abortion doctors against their will. My argument is not that we should force people to provide abortions against their will, to work in an abortion clinic against their will. There's nothing to do with that. What I am pointing out, and what you have already established that you agree is going on, is that all across the United States, abortion has been made basically impossible to obtain from any medical professional, regardless of your situation. And my point here is that you saying that's not a rights issue is absolutely absurd.
I don't think it's. I don't think anyone's rights are being violated here.
You don't think anyone's rights are being violated?
No.
You already agree that they should have a right to an abortion. You just don't. You just don't agree that they have a right to a safe one.
They have They have a right to an abortion. They have a right to a safe one. But
if they have a right to a safe one, they have a right to abortion clinics being readily available all across the United States. That's it.
If there's a single abortion clinic available, it's they have the right to use it.
So you know, so basically what you're saying is
you're just saying it's hard. You're just saying it's hard.
I'm sorry.
Look, now you're just letting look.
If there's a single abortion clinic still open in the United States, then that's enough.
I'm not saying that's preferable. I didn't say it was enough. It's enough for them. Look, I'm not saying that's preferable.
Sorry, that's just, oh God.
I mean, it sounds like you're laughing because you don't have an argument. Look,
no, it's not. That's just absolutely fundamentally absurd. If there's just one abortion clinic still open, then they still have that right actualized.
They have the right to use that.
You have to include some level of reasonability when it comes to the
how many would you say?
There's no way you can actually say that. That is so ridiculous.
Why don't you put a number on it? No. Why don't you put a number on it? How many have to be available before the right is being actualized?
I don't need to put a number on it to say that one available abortion clinic in the entirety of the United States.
I'm asking you. I'm asking you because you think that accessibility has something to do with their rights being actualized. So how accessible does it have to be? Do you have to have like
accessible
per every how many square miles?
As accessible as hospitals.
as accessible as hospitals.
Yes.
What if nobody in those hospitals? I mean, I don't know. The thing is, I'm not against changing those laws, like that red tape. You know, I'm all for people changing those laws. I just don't know. I guess this is kind of goes back to our thing about how the pie thing, how I don't think it's his right to steal it, you do, and yet we come to the same conclusion. I don't think it's a women's rights issue, you do, but we come to the same conclusion that we should get rid of red tape.
This is weird because we both agree as to the definition of rights, but I don't know, like it just doesn't seem to me that we agree as to what that definition even means.
Well, because here's the thing is that if you're saying that accessibility has to do with actualizing their rights, that goes beyond just the mere people performing the service in the abortion clinic, but that means we would have to spend a lot of time and resources. A ton of people have to spend a lot of time and resources on building these facilities all over. Making sure that
we wouldn't have to do that if these rights weren't being infringed upon in the first place through these trap laws that have been closing these places down systematically.
But we would, though, because
I am terribly sorry, but I have no sympathy. I have no sympathy for someone saying we infringed on your rights all this time, but you want us to make it better again? That's asking too much. I'm sorry, that's absurd.
No. What I'm saying is that there's a lot more that's going to go into something like once you say that, accessibility of this service is my right, then what's the next level? You will, unless you just want to rely on the free market, which is fine. I'd be for that. But
the free market.
Right, and you don't. I know that you don't. The thing is, like, so you think that the government needs to step in on this and use money.
I think the government needs to stop doing what it's been doing and put things back the way it was, because it was
right. So
fine.
Right, and I agree with you that a lot of that red tape should go away. So once that goes away, where is the money for all these accessible abortion clinics and doctors all going to come from?
Where it's always been coming from.
Where?
The Planned Parenthood budget in the national budget.
Okay, so you are saying that the government has to implement this?
Yes.
Okay, and do you know that? Do you realize
that it needs to be made available?
Right, and you realize that the government's money that they're spending on implementing this isn't the government's money; it's our money.
Yes, and I'm perfectly okay with that. So I can go ahead and spend my money doing that.
Right. So you are perfectly okay with that. And that's the problem that we run into with I'm just talking about my opinions aside, the disagreement about this thing. It's not like a women's like, oh, fuck women, we just don't want them to have abortions. It's we don't want our money going towards.
Right. It's about maximizing your personal well-being without regard to others.
That's a kind of a weird way to put it, but
it's accurate.
Sure. Maximizing your here's the thing. It's like
I just fundamentally disagree with you on the notion.
I know you do. That's the thing, though, is that you're basically just kind of opening all these doors to, just saying like, okay, this is something that is good for some people, so we need to all spend money, and if you don't, then you're some kind of misogynist or something.
Welcome to any form of government ever. You're gonna pay for stuff you don't want to pay for.
Yeah, but the thing is that that's not really a case for doing it more.
As a result, you'll end up paying for stuff you do want.
Yeah, but by increasing a budget.
Okay, hold on. So, do you agree?
You are decreasing budget from other things by increasing it for certain things. It's not like
there's some things that I just don't feel like we need a budget for, like fucking our.
You don't, right? Yeah, that's the problem, is that you don't think that everybody has an idea of what they would want their money to go to.
We have legislators to deal with all of this. So
you're just like, oh, go ahead and just legislate what you want. You guys deal with it.
No,
I'm just some dumb like.
Obviously, I'm not saying go ahead and legislate what you want. Well, the past half hour has been me explaining that there's a particular form of legislation going on that I think is absolutely unjust.
Right. So basically, you, and again, this is a point where we agree, is that deregulating some of these restrictions on abortion clinics is probably a good thing. I agree with you. I think they should be deregulated, and I don't consider myself a Republican or conservative in any way, but the deregulation thing, that whole aspect, is traditionally a conservative position. So do you agree with deregulation across the board, or just in the scenario of the abortion thing?
They're not even regulating. I don't think you get it. This isn't a result of them.
No, but it is, though,
trying to make things safer and the like. This is politicians with an agenda saying we want to shut down abortion clinics, but we can't say it's about abortion clinics, so we're going with using legislation.
So they do it legally by having rules and audits and stuff that are stupid, like the hallway thing. So that is a regulation that someone can come around and audit. Then and then if it's not up to code, they can fine you or shut you down. I don't see that as being.
There's a level of reasonability to that.
Huh?
There's a level of reasonability to that.
I know, and that's how they get away with it. But there's a level. But that's what I'm saying.
That is how they get away with it. But here's the thing: I don't know if you watched the entirety of the clip that I sent to you, that I linked, but they've already John Oliver went over.
I did. I don't really see John Oliver as being an expert. It doesn't
matter, because you can just read his sources. He posts all of his sources.
Okay, so continue. What about John
It
Oliver?
doesn't have to be John Oliver. I'm not fucking saying
What
that
about
he's a
okay?
fucking arbiter. What I'm telling you is that these are actually like things that we can legally fight against. Unreasonable regulation. There
I don't.
is such a thing as reasonable and unreasonable regulation. I'm
I,
not throwing the baby out with the bathwater and saying this regulation caused problems, so no more regulation anymore. Like that's ridiculous. That's absolutely childish.
yeah, but what I'm saying is that that's where I just don't see these really stupid regulations that they have on abortion clinics. I mean, there's just hundreds of stupid regulations that everybody has issues with. Like, I mean, running any kind of business is a nightmare because you have so many regulations. Tons of businesses get shut down for these.
And there's a lot of regulations that are reasonable. So fight back against the unreasonable ones and accept the reasonable ones.
Right. So I agree with you on that. But what I'm saying is I just don't see the difference. I mean, again, what's the point of making it into like some grandiose women's rights thing and pretending like these people.
Honestly, it's not me making it into a women's rights thing. I fundamentally see it as a women's rights thing.
And that's fine. I just see it. I see it as a regulation. I see it as a regulation problem.
There is no and of course you see it that way, but you have no grounds for it. Whereas I have grounds to see it as a women's rights issue. And
I think you have about as much grounds as I do.
I also have already shown you how, even by your own standards, it is a women's rights issue. You just
So what does that mean in practical? What does that mean in practice, though? So just like before, our pie thing.
So for one, it's discriminatory against a women's right. It goes against Roe v. Wade. There's a lot of different things, like establishing that this is the case makes it so you can actually say that these are unreasonable practices. If you can't say that a person's rights are being infringed upon by regulation, you can't say that the regulation is unreasonable.
I don't agree with that.
Okay, then how else do you determine that a regulation is unreasonable? What's your metric?
Well, the thing is, I think you would have to. I mean, you have to play by these people who make these ridiculous regulations. In order to combat that, you can't just like bring in this kind of thing like, oh, you guys are infringing on my rights, because they're just going to say no, we're not. And so you have to play by their game, I guess. It's like you have to find a way. You have to find a way to approach it.
So okay, that doesn't answer my question. If we're not going to go based off of infringing rights, then what's your metric for saying that the standards are unreasonable?
There's all kinds of, let's just talk about, like I said, it's a regulation issue. If someone has a regulation that the hallways have to be a certain length or whatever, you can challenge that regulation without bringing people's rights into it. I mean, do you think that you can't? Do you think there's no grounds for challenging that?
What's your metric?
I mean, I would just say that, you could challenge that and just say, like John Oliver said, he said, that we don't ever, in this clinic, there's never a time when two wheelchairs need to pass each other. So we don't need this regulation because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't apply to us. That's how you can beat that regulation. You don't need to say my rights are being infringed on. You just say it's a bad regulation. Get rid of it.
But here's the thing. They managed to get it passed in the first place because they worded the law in such a way as to make it so that it's reasonable to assume that there would be wheelchairs being passed because it's a hospital.
Right. So that's why you have to come in and try to change these laws so that they're worded not so vaguely.
The easiest way to deal with these things is to make it about rights. If you don't make it about rights, then you're going to lose.
All right. Well, I think that
you have no metric. Like I asked you for a metric several times. You haven't given me one.
No, that my metric is. I mean, like, are you saying that you can't? Like, I mean, I'm not the one who's like advocating for that. I
don't know if you can or can't. I just know that that's the easiest way to do it.
Well, I mean, it doesn't seem to be very easy because, according to you, we have this huge problem that hasn't,
Yeah.
I mean, how long have they been fighting this? Like since
a problem that you weren't even aware of until Friday. Like a lot of people just aren't even aware that this is happening. A lot of people don't give a shit enough to keep updated on this stuff. It's not widely reported on. This isn't something that every single news source is covering on a regular basis. No one,
so
don't
I mean,
know.
there's a lot of things that a lot of people
like
know about.
the fundamental problem with any sort of issue being addressed in government is the lack of people who care.
Well, here's what I care about. I care that the government is imposing bizarre regulations like the length of the hallway.
Right.
I mean, that applies to, that doesn't just apply to women.
Yet again,
that applies to everyone.
Yet again, I'm going to ask you, just like any lawyer would, and just like any lawmaker would, establish your metric for saying this is not right.
If I was okay, like that's a question. I mean, you just asked me to do that off the cuff. Like I'm not a lawyer.
I'm not asking you to do it off the cuff. If you're saying I can't do that right now, that's fine. I'm telling you that you don't have an alternative, and I'm giving you a thing that you can go for.
No, but we have tons of that's a false.
Hold on.
Way to look at this.
Hold on. You're saying I'm not gonna go with the rights way of dealing with it, and that's you. But you don't have an alternative right now. So
well, actually, here's right.
first. And
all right, here's an alternative.
I'm gonna go with the easy option.
All right. Well, why don't I do this? I mean, I could say it's about rights. I could say it's my rights as a clinic owner to, to decide for my own business what the well, but see, here's the thing: is that you don't seem to recognize business, business rights in the first place, really. So, like, if I have a business or a clinic, I think that you could argue that it's ridiculous that the government is putting a regulation on your hallway length or whatever. That's your right as a business to have your own place where you can have the hallways as long or as short as you want. Like, so you could make it a rights issue. I mean.
So you don't have a problem with this being a rights issue?
I just see it as being a regulation issue, an unfair regulation issue.
Okay. I see it as a all right.
I just don't see why you add the layer of it. I guess it's because you think that it's more beneficial to your cause to say that it's that these lawmakers just hate women.
Aside from the fact that I genuinely do believe that it's a women's rights issue, and there's no argument thus far that has demonstrated that it's not, and I've given several arguments that have yet to be refuted to demonstrate that it is. All that aside. There's also the fact that it makes it easier to address in law if fucking new legislation is actually infringing on any sort of rights. To demonstrate that is to destroy those laws. That's just how it works. That's how our law works.
Do you think that the people who are making these laws, so clearly they have certain stances against abortion?
Yeah, sure they do.
Right.
Okay. If their legislation, if it doesn't hold up in court, then it does not matter if they don't want it to happen.
Right, but you're saying, but you are basically making this into an issue about these people who are making the laws are somehow, I guess, like, would you bring misogyny into this?
Are anti-abortion legislating things so that abortion clinics will be shut down so that they can stop abortion? Yes, that's what they're doing.
All right, so you do realize that people have. I mean, like I said, I'm pro-choice, but people have certain reasons why they're against abortion, right? That's right.
It's not. It doesn't matter. The law is very clear that abortion access is legal, so it doesn't matter if they're against it. It does not matter. Not morally.
The thing is, like,
not legally speaking.
What do you think? Okay, so why don't we just do this? What do you think the solution is to fixing those laws?
By taking those laws to court and getting them struck down.
Okay. And I don't think, and again, I don't think that I don't have anything against that. It's just, again, this matter of you and I disagree on kind of this, like, like what's a right, what's not right, what's a woman's issue, what's not a woman's issue, but we still have the same.
The most absurd thing. I'm calling it a woman's issue, and you're saying I don't agree that it is.
I don't think it really is.
For no good reason, really. I mean, you haven't really.
Well, no, it's just that it's not a. I mean, these women still have. I would just say again, there's no rights being infringed here.
Well, then
it's just that. Well, that's where we disagree because you have a different idea of what rights are.
But you're just wrong. I mean, the notion.
I would say you're just wrong.
The mere notion that that you agree that they have a right to an abortion, and yet abortion is being prevented from them having access to, and you think that's not an infringement of their rights. I mean, that's just you disagreeing with yourself.
No, it's not. It's
yeah, it definitely is.
It is legal.
Right to this thing. Well, they're limiting you from being able to do this thing. They have a right.
Like okay. Okay, there it is. There's this ambiguous they.
The legislators passing these particular trap laws. Like, does it matter what I'm talking about when I say they? Like, honestly, you know what I'm talking about. Everyone here knows what I'm talking about in the chat. Just don't try to say, oh, you're saying they. You know exactly what I mean.
The thing is, I don't think it's okay. Like, it's my right to eat a cheeseburger, but if there's no fucking McDonald's in my city, that's like not anyone else's. It's not like a civil rights issue.
Why isn't there? That's another question. That's a relevant question. Why are there no burger joints?
What's preventing? All right, so you said
merely the case. If it is merely the case that they're not near you because they just don't want, because burger joint owners,
maybe there's some hard regulations on burger industry.
That's separate. That is different from targeted closing down of burger joints.
So what if there's a bunch of fucking what if the panel of people making legislation for fast food places are all a bunch of vegans or something? Is that basically
called discrimination against meat eaters? Hey!
No, but so that's what it comes down to, is that you're saying that there is some massive discrimination from the people who are in legislation against women specifically, but it's not just.
I mean, they might not think that it's a women's rights issue, but it definitely is. Like,
all right, but the thing is, like I said, it doesn't matter. Like, I don't really know why you think that necessarily matters. Like, I wouldn't say.
Regardless of whether or not it matters, you're disagreeing with yourself when you say that.
No, I'm not.
When you say that it's not. Yes, you are. I've already gotten you to agree that a woman's bodily autonomy and access to abortion are her rights in the United States.
Not access. Not access. That's where we disagree. I don't think your access to stuff is your right.
That just contradicts itself right there. That's a self-contradicting statement. They have a right to abortion, but they don't have a right to access to it. That's a contradiction. You can't deal.
They have the right to access it when it's available by law. It goes back.
But they don't have a right to access it. Gotcha. Contradiction. That's
not what I'm saying.
Well, that is what you're saying. I mean,
do you want to let me say something?
Not that.
Your right to have something regularly, right next to you and easily accessible, that's not a right. Like I said, even if there was a fucking group of evil vegans who are stopping McDonald's from being in my city, having McDonald's next to my house isn't a right. That my access to it isn't my right.
Your ability to expect to be able to be treated like any other consumer is a right.
Let's just call it an expectation. That's not a right. I expect that there.
Right. You can expect a right.
But again, it's not my right though. It is not my right to have McDonald's next to my house.
Let's just go straight with the definition. You are entitled to be in a state wherein you are treated equally to all other consumers. Yes or no?
It depends on what those criteria are. You're entitled to be treated equally, based on skin color, the things that are defined in the. Now we're back to that.
We're not back to that because it's irrelevant. What I just said is a very simple thing. If you're going to go ahead and say, well, what if I'm doing something illegal? That's irrelevant. That's not being treated equally to other consumers. In fact, it is being treated equally to other consumers, because if other consumers do something illegal, then they get arrested. So you would be treated equally if you did something illegal and got arrested.
Right. Okay.
So you have the entitlement to be treated the same as other consumers. Yes or no?
Yeah.
There you
Let's
go.
say it.
So you have the right. So you have the right to not have your dietary choices discriminated against legally.
You'd have to, first of all, you would have to prove that that's discrimination.
Not
and
hard.
I don't think I wouldn't. That's the thing though, as I wouldn't make it.
That's not hard to do. Oh, the legislation to close down these burger joints has all been written by vegans who have expressed their distaste for access to meat and have made their intentions clear. It's not hard to do.
I wouldn't say that the solution to that would be to rally up all the meat eaters and be like, no, this is our right.
But it's
our right to eat McDonald's.
You still agree it still is an infringement on your rights.
To not have McDonald's in my...
To not be treated like all other consumers. To have your...
You're really playing a weird word game here. To not be treated... you're equal to all consumers in their accessibility for McDonald's. You don't have it.
A certain demographic of consumers are being treated favorably by the law than you. That's discrimination. That's an infringement on your rights.
You're saying, so in this case, you're saying that the vegans are being treated favorably.
Well, yes, because the fucking vegan legislation are obviously getting rid of all the non-vegan places.
Oh my God, this is off the rails. Let's try to
how
roll
is
this
that
back
not treating them favorably? I don't understand how you don't see that.
I don't see how me demanding that there's a meat, even like I said, even if there was a bunch of evil vegans stopping me from having regulations on restaurants, I would tackle that as you could find a way to tackle that issue without making it into some like grandiose discrimination against meat eaters.
I think this is...
It's just so weird. Why would you think...
I think this is absolutely absurd that you're just... You agree...
Why would you think that it's your right to have a fucking McDonald's next to your house? It doesn't make any fucking sense.
We're up to 2 hours. I want to wrap up. I think that this is absolutely absurd that I have demonstrated...
You haven't demonstrated shit.
You have agreed to every premise of the argument, but you just...
No. We came to the same end result. We both think certain things at the end, but the way we get there is not the same.
No. We didn't come to the same end result. I gave you a bunch of premises that you agreed with, and then when I gave you a conclusion of discrimination, you disagreed with that conclusion. So I don't see how you can do that. You didn't point out a flaw in the premises, either or their...
I don't think it's a discrimination. It's not.
I'm wrapping up. I'm just giving final.
Okay.
Words right now. I'm just giving final words. You can have a final word right after I'm done. I think this whole notion of saying I don't see the point of calling them rights issues when I've given several arguments every which way to demonstrate that they are rights issues, that you have agreed with many of the premises of, that you have agreed all the way up to the conclusion and said I don't see it that way. I mean, you have no legal basis for basically anything that you've proposed here other than your own intuition. You've cited nothing. I've given you citations for laws as to how rights work, as to how particular rights work that we've quibbled over. I've given you examples. I've even cited philosophers to explain how rights work and to explain where the deficiencies are. Hold on. I'll give you a final word. Don't worry about it. I just don't like everything about this conversation makes very little sense to me. And it's not that I don't understand what your position is. I do. I just think it's absurd and doesn't make any sense. I can recite it without an issue, but I for the life of me, I can't see how you can believe it. That's the problem. And I'll say this, the one part that I was genuinely amused at, it was not because I didn't have an argument. The reason I cracked up laughing is because when you say something so absurd as to say, well, if you have you technically still have access to abortion if there's just one clinic open in the entire country. Like, there's no reasonability there. There's no law would agree that that's reasonable access in any way whatsoever. And
I didn't say it was reasonable.
And to say that that's to try and use that as some sort of technicality of accessibility is nothing short of what I view anyway as weaseling. Like, that is ridiculous.
I never said it was preferable or reasonable.
All right, go ahead and give your final words, and we'll close.
All right, so I do think that you're misrepresenting the vast majority of what I've said. I never said that that was reasonable or that it would hold up in court or anything like that. I think that we've come largely to the same, just like that pie thing, where you believe that it's this person's right to steal a pie and I don't. And yet we both think they should be penalized. It's similar in the sense where you think it's a huge women's rights issue. I just think it's a regulation issue. And but we come to the same conclusion that, yes, women should be able to have abortions and we should deregulate those ridiculous rules. So I don't know. A lot of the same things that you said to me just now in your final thing, I think I could throw right back at you. I mean, I have also cited some of the same laws that you're using, like the Civil Rights Act, I think are actually in more support of my side. I don't think that there is any such thing that's saying that, you have the right to these things. You have the right to pursue them, but you don't have the right to just have all these things. And if you claim that you have the right to these things, what that means, what that entails, is that someone else has to provide them for you. And so that necessarily makes other people have to get involved. And it forces the hand of other people to do something for you. And this goes back to the very core of this, is that you seem to think there's a right to service, which you've never cited a single thing that even, it sounds like you just made that up, because there is no such thing that gives you a right to service. I have no idea where that even came from. So that your entire argument is based on that, basically, this invisible right to service, where you have the right to someone else's resources and labor. And I just don't think, I think we have a fundamental disagreement there. And I don't know what else to say.
All right.
I would like to talk to you again on a different subject sometime.
Okay, that's fine.
I would like to talk to you about Islam sometime, because I saw some of your videos on that.
I'm sure we could have a riveting debate about that.
It'd be amazing.
I'm not sure how much scholarly work you've read on that, but that would be interesting.
Well,
since
more than most Muslims.
Probably that would be an interesting conversation. We can have that at another time. I'd like to thank my guest Gabe Hayward for coming on and having a spirited debate with me. I had a lot of fun. I think the chat looked like they were having a lot of fun. It was a very active chat, which is weird for me. We actually capped out at 15 live viewers, which
Who are these people
watching? I don't fucking know.
The weirdos.
I know maybe like 3 of them. I don't know who the rest are. But I enjoyed myself. Gabe, we can, I don't know, talk again at another point in which I can have you on at a time that would be reasonable for the both of us. And maybe we can discuss what the topic would be. Maybe Islam, maybe I don't know, economics, free market economics versus, like, I don't know, anything else. But yeah, I had fun. And I hope the chat, you guys had fun. I will see you all another time. I cannot guarantee any sort of like date and time right now when I'll be back. So y'all have a good day. Gabe, you have a good day as well. I'm going to be closing this out in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bye-bye.